Namaste, welcome to Arthaniti. Today I am going to talk about NRIs selling residential property in India. Now, few days back, I received a call from one of my friends who resides in the US, telling me that she intends to sell her inherited property in India, and as she wanted to buy a house in the US. So she had two questions: whether she could remit the sale proceeds from the property that she would sell in India back to the US, and if there were any tax implications. Right now, to answer her query, I thought it would be best to make a video and share with you the details about the kind of tax implications NRIs face if they sell residential property in India. Irrespective of your residential status, okay, if you sell a residential property in India and earn capital gains, you will be taxed. It is that plain and simple. So NRIs as well as residents, yeah, no matter what your residential status is, if you earn capital gains, you are bound to be taxed. In case of NRIs, what happens is, if the ownership of the house is held for more than 2 years, yes, what happens? The buyer will deduct TDS at long-term capital gains tax rate of 20% plus surcharge plus cess. Understood? Property held for more than 2 years, buyer will straight away deduct 20% plus surcharge plus cess. If the property is held for less than 2 years, the buyer will deduct tax at source at 30% plus surcharge plus cess. Understood? So, NRIs, there are two conditions. If you are holding the property for more than 2 years, buyer will deduct tax at source at 20% plus surcharge plus TDS. If you are holding property for less than 2 years, buyer will deduct TDS at 30% plus surcharge plus cess. Now, in case of high value properties above 2 crores and above 5 crores, the surcharge that was added to the long-term capital gains tax was much higher. It was 25% for properties above 2 crores and 37% for properties above 5 crores. But in the union budget of 2022, the finance minister has prescribed a cap of 15% or surcharge, no matter what the value of property is. So this is one of the advantages that this budget has brought in if you intend to sell your property in India. Now, many times what happens is, this TDS that is deducted is higher than any tax liability that incurs upon you in India. Okay, now since you reside outside India, your income in India is limited to the interests and dividends that you received on any investments that you hold in India, correct? So it may happen that this TDS that is deducted in case of sale of residential property is much more or higher than the tax liability that you have. So what is the way out? The way out either is, at the end of the year when you file your returns, you claim a rebate. Okay, the procedure is cumbersome, but that is one of the way. The other way is to approach an assessing officer, apply online and ask them to get a form, ask them for a form because of which you will be charged a lower rate of TDS. The assessing officer, after looking at the capital gains that you will earn and the TDS that will be deducted on the sale and your tax liability, will issue you a form which will help you claim TDS to be cut at a lower rate. But this has to be done before the agreement is signed and registered, right? So there are two ways to reduce your tax liability. You can opt for capital gains tax exemption as well. Now, how can you do that? You can do that by investing in another residential property in India. Now, underline this: you cannot buy a residential property outside India and claim exemption from capital gains in India. To claim exemption, you will have to invest in another residential property within India within a time frame of 2 years after the sale of the residential property. Okay, you can either buy a new house within 1 year before you have sold the residential property, or 2 years after you have sold the residential property. So you have a window of 3 years, 1 year prior and 2 years after you have sold your residential property, so that any proceeds that you earn from the sale can be reinvested in buying another residential property. Okay. Alternatively, you can also invest under section 54EC in prescribed capital gain bonds. Okay, now what kind of bonds are these? These bonds are prescribed by Government of India under the Income Tax Act. Generally, National Highway Authority of India, Rural Electrification Board issue capital gain bonds. The interest rate that they offer is not high, ranges from somewhere around 5.5 to 6%, and there is a lock-in period of 5 years. You cannot withdraw the money before the lock-in ends, right? So there are two ways to claim tax exemption: either invest in another residential property or invest in 54EC capital gain bonds, correct? So through these, what you can do is you can get capital gains exemption. One question that my friend asked me was, would she be able to take the funds outside country back to America where she resides? Well, the answer is yes. If you wish to repatriate funds outside the country, you can do so. But there is a within the limit prescribed by the Income Tax Act. Correct? Now, what is the limit? The limit is $1 million per financial year. So you cannot take back more than $1 million in a financial year through your accounts or through the sale proceeds of your residential property. The limit is set. You can transfer your sale proceeds of a property, or you can transfer any income that you earn in India, but within that overall limit of $1 million in a financial year. Correct? So to answer her queries, will she be taxed? Yes. If she has earned capital gains, she will be taxed. There are ways in which the tax liability can be reduced or the exemptions can be claimed, which I have explained in the video. And can she take the money back to America? Yes, she can, with an overall limit of $1 million in a financial year. Correct? So I hope I have put some light. If you are an NRI and if you are planning to sell your residential property in India, this is the way you will be taxed. If you have any queries on this matter, please feel free to comment below the video and I'll be happy to help you. Until next time, stay safe.